Hi, welcome back to No Water River. This is our History of American Children's Poets of the 20th Century with Bennett Hopkins. Hi, Lee, how are you?
Hi, Renee.
This is our third episode. This series is a decade-by-decade journey through the rich history of children's poetry in the United States and the people, of course, who wrote it and who are still writing it. So being our third episode, we are in the 1940s this time, and we only have three poets that arrived on the scene: Colin Cullen, Elizabeth Cotsworth, and Harry Bain. So I'm going to hand this over to Lee to get us started.
Yeah, three poets for children became prominent in the 1940s, which I think is odd, only three when you think of an entire decade. There are probably many reasons why, but we can't get into them, but there were only three. Beginning with Colin Cullen. Cullen was born in 1903. Due to a lack of records of his early childhood, historians found it very difficult to even find out where he was born. We do know that he was brought to Harlem in New York at the age of 9 and raised by his maternal grandmother. His first collection of poetry, again, was for adults, like we talked about so many other poets. It appeared in 1925. A year later, he graduated from Harvard University with a master's degree. He wrote prolifically, novels, plays, many poetry collections. And in 2013, which is quite a span, finally, Colin Cullen, the collected poems were published. But curiously enough, he only created one book of poetry for children, and that is The Lost Zoo, which appeared in 1940. The book begins and ends with very long essays about his cat, Christopher, named Christopher Cat, which Cullen describes how he co-wrote the book with the cat. Many poems are about animals who Noah might have had on his famous ark. A sampling of the poems, and they're short, are: first came L.E. Fant's letter, who writes, "Dear Noah, please save me a spot exposed to the sun where the mice are not. But if I must share my chamber, the ant is the one I should welcome. Yours, L.E. Fant." Then came Adam's answer. "Dear Noah, to lend a flavor of fun to the trip is a special favor. Arrange to slip me in L.E. Fant's cage. My, won't he rage? He'll practice and prance, and he'll leap and shake your big house when he finds he's to sleep near Adam the mouse." The book continues with a lot of poems called "A Very Few Unfortunate Few We Never See at the Zoo." And these are made-up animals. The wake-up world with a long tail curled, and the ha-ha-ha who sang tra-la, tra-la-la, tra-la-la. And that, again, is his contribution to children's poetry. It was interesting, though, in the 1930s, he wrote a play, St. Louis Women, based on a novel, God Sends Sunday, by his friend Arna Bontemps, who was another extremely important during the Harlem Renaissance. And although the play was never produced, it was turned into a musical in 1946 with Pearl Bailey making her Broadway debut and featuring the song Come Rain or Come Shine, written by Johnny Mercer and Harold Arlen, a staple of today's American songbook. Colin unfortunately died in 1946, just before the play premiered. Unfortunate. Moving on to Elizabeth Cotsworth. Elizabeth Cotsworth was born in Buffalo, in New York in 1893. Again, known as a writer of adult poetry, her first book, Fox Prince, was published in 1921. And this is a very interesting anecdote. One of her best friends and former classmate at Vassar was Louise Seaman, who became founder of the very first children's book publishing in the United States, which was Macmillan. It was Louise, again, very, very close friends, who wisely encouraged Elizabeth to write for young children. In 1931, it was a good move for her to write for children. She received the Newbery Medal for The Cat Who Went to Heaven, which was illustrated by Lynn Ward, who went on to win the 1953 Caldecott Medal for The Big Bear. Her book, Summer Green, was her first book of poetry written for children, published in 1948. She did not write much for children, but Summer Green was at that time popular. I had the opportunity to know and really get to know Elizabeth Cotsworth. We had many, many warm, wondrous conversations when she was well into her 80s. A trademark of her work was that she included poems in her works of fiction, her novels for children. For example, in her novel, Away Goes Sally, which was a series of, quote, Sally books, one of her best and most beloved poems appears, Swift Things Are Beautiful, which I know you're going to share, and you're going to follow it with another gem that she had written called I Like to See a Thunderstorm. So let's hear it.
Okay, let me pull that up. These are two really just beautiful poems that captured my imagination. So the first one is Swift Things Are Beautiful by Elizabeth Cotsworth. Swift things are beautiful, swallows and deer and lightning that falls bright-veined and clear, rivers and meteors, wind in the wheat, the strong withered horse, the runner's sure feet. And slow things are beautiful, the closing of day, the pause of the wave that curves downward to spray, the ember that crumbles, the opening flower, and the ox that moves on in the quiet of power.
Beautiful language.
Just gorgeous. I love, love, love that last phrase, the quiet of power. It's beautiful. And the other one we're going to look at is I Like to See a Thunderstorm, and I like this one because it has a really different feel from the first one. So it was kind of neat to see two sides of this poet. I like to see a thunderstorm. I like to see a thunderstorm, a dunderstorm, a blunderstorm. I like to see it, black and slow, come stumbling down the hills. I like to hear a thunderstorm, a plunderstorm, a wonderstorm, roar loudly at our little house and shake the windowsills.
Again, these were quite classic pieces of work in terms of poetic meter, metaphor, language. Lovely, lovely stuff produced in the 1940s. Here is a letter. Well, let me start by saying, since you read the poems, I asked her once to define poetry for me, and she answered, "Poetry is thoughts whose intensity makes the heart beat faster. The words follow the rhythm of the heart." Here is a letter. I think this is fascinating. A letter that she wrote me. Look at this stationery. In 1973, note it is all handwritten. She wrote everything in handwriting, more than 90 books. Never used a typewriter. She had said to me, "I prefer the silence of the pen to the mechanical sounds of the typewriter." We had a lovely time corresponding. She died in 1986 at the age of 83. Wonderful contributions to the genre of poetry. Moving on to Harry Bain. I was fortunate enough to know Harry.
No surprise.
No, it makes me feel old, but
No, I was just going to say how lucky you are and what amazing experience
how lucky I am.
that you've met.
How lucky I have been. Not only knew him, we were on panels together at various conventions, and he was an incredible man. He was born in 1898 in Yavapai, Arizona, and grew up in Prescott, Arizona. After graduating from Harvard University in 1922, he worked in radio broadcasting, taught creative writing at the University of Arizona, and much more. I think we see a pattern of a lot of these poets who really had studied at tremendously Ivy League colleges. It wasn't until 1947, at the age of 49, that he moved to Connecticut, and it was the first year his first book of poems for children was published, called The Little Hill, which was written for his three children, Pamela, Prescott, and Peter. Other books of verse followed in rapid succession. He was truly a poet who wrote for children. He also wrote novels, nonfiction, and was a translator of Japanese haiku, and did many volumes translating from the Japanese. In 1984, I worked with his wife, Alice, a wonderful woman, and Anna Beer, the late beloved editor at Harcourt, to compile my book, Crickets and Bullfrogs and Whispers of Thunder, 50 poems culled from his varied work, and it is illustrated with Harry's own drawings. I'll share just a taste of Bain's incredible mastery of verse via one of his poems called Trees. Trees are the kindest things I know. They do not harm. They simply grow and spread a shade for sleepy cows and gather birds among their boughs. They give us fruit in leaves above and wood to make our houses of, and leaves to burn on Halloween, and in the spring, new buds of green. They are the first when days begin to touch the beams of morning sun. They are last to hold the light when evening changes into light. And when a moon floats on the sky, they hum a drowsy lullaby of sleepy children long ago. Trees are the kindest things I know. Just a beautiful, beautiful piece of writing. One of his books for adults was called Chrysalis, subtitled Concerning Children and Poetry. And I'm going to share the opening paragraph of this book, which again sums up the man's philosophy, his life, and his love of writing. He wrote, "My first memory is a profound and sunny piece of leaves, birds, animals, changing seasons, spring to summer, summer to fall, fall to winter, and the wonder of being alive. I have tried to capture those early years of primitive awareness in poems and poetic stories. Knowing children better than I do most adults, at least finding their behavior more understandable, I believe them to be a distinct, wise, worldwide domination worthy of celebration for their courage, their dignity, and vision." And his work is truly part of our heritage of children's poetry through the ages. And that about sums up our tape for the 40s. Again, we had 3 poets, mainly only one, Harry Bain, who specifically wrote for children. So in our next segment, we'll get to cover a few more who emerged during the 1950s.
And I look forward to it. I took a little sneak peek at the list, and I'm looking forward to hearing a little bit more about that group of poets. So,
and more emerged in the 1950s. We're starting to get more poetry to come into the mainstream of the genre, which is quite exciting.
Yeah, it only took a few decades, so that's good. All right. Well, thank you again, Lee, for your research and the time that you have spent on all of these episodes thus far, and that I know you'll continue to spend. We definitely appreciate it. So until next time, we hope you come back for the 1950s. And thanks again.
Thank you, Renee. Looking forward.
Me too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.